So I'm going to explain the simple project system. And the question is, why do we need another project system? We already have Gantt charts. We have the Project Management Institute. We have Agile and all the different methods that came out of that, including extreme development and all that good stuff. Maybe you've heard of some of these things, maybe you haven't. But the point of the matter is, the reason this was invented, one of the main reasons is that when you're working with high technology, you're working with a fairly complex, sophisticated, innovative new thing. It's going to be a lot riskier than, say, constructing skyscrapers. Well, I'm not convinced. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you made a chart of all the software that's ever been produced, you could cut it up so that roughly half of these are projects that fail. Software being maybe the example of one of the more risky areas. Fail meaning it's never completed. You get started and never actually produce something of value, something you can ship and recover your money for. But this is also true in other high-tech industries. When you're trying to do something new, trying to do something innovative. If we're going to continue with this illustration, you can divide it in half again. You can tell I'm just a master artist here. And here are the projects that were catastrophically late. And we can keep dividing this up, and it gets it's still not pretty. You divide it up here. And here are the ones that, maybe they weren't catastrophically late, but they were over budget. Or sometimes they're stripped down to almost nothing. And somewhere over here, there's just this tiny little sliver. More people have ascended bodily into heaven than have shipped great software on time. And that's a humongous problem, not only for the obvious reasons, but because this is what it looks like. Okay, you're trying to produce this product, and I'm assuming you're wanting to do something interesting, something innovative, something that creates value in the market, something that's sophisticated. And when you're talking about high tech, even in high tech, we have all the other pieces of the company that have to feed into this that maybe aren't so quite as risky or sophisticated. Here's your marketing team, and very importantly, there's the sales team, and then there's even the executive team. A lot of these guys are talking to your customers and making promises. And the entire business depends on coordination around this product. So their calendars are all set to, you have this date on the calendar. X marks the spot, and everybody's running towards this date. And it's enormously expensive when instead of here, you end up going right off the page. And these guys got set, they tried to put it together, and nothing happens. And then the customer is at risk because he's looking at other competitive products and so forth. It's a bad situation. So a lot has been done to try to solve the situation in software, but this applies to any kind of tech situation. And I feel like the Gantt charts don't do it. I feel like even the latest Agile methods more sidestep the problem than actually address it head on. So I think they have some things right. And Agile, this is sort of a variation of the Agile technique that was introduced to make risky software projects a little more palatable to the business. But while there is an emphasis on, let's look at what's happening instead of trying to predict everything in the future. And let's be flexible. And let's have something that's almost ready to ship at all times. It still doesn't give you enough predictive power to tell where you're going to land and give you some idea of some of the important things that are going to be in it. And that predictive power is important. In other words, we're just saying, well, screw you, marketing guys. Screw you, sales guys. You'll get it when you get it, and then you can start on it. well, that's a recipe for a product flop in the marketplace. And so, I mean, have you ever seen a Gantt chart? Of course you have. Everybody's seen a Gantt chart, because everybody who's ever worked on any sort of complex project, this is very common stuff, and have arrows going here. And so there's all this stuff that has worked well for building skyscrapers, and you have these lines of tasks, and maybe you can trace critical path. And in high tech, maybe one of the big problems in high tech is it's very difficult to specify everything up front. I can construct a skyscraper completely on paper and every detail before we ever break ground. And software is usually not that easy. If you specified the requirements in enough detail that you actually had enough specificity about the detail, about how the program should behave, you might as well have written the code at that point. And that is also true for many other technical projects. So you can see how you can get all that detail, and Gantt charts are good when you have everything pre-specified. But if you're discovering what you're building as you build it, it's equal parts archaeology and construction. You're uncovering something, covering new knowledge, and you're using it to build something. If you had to invent wood every time you're going to make your house, that would be more like it. And the Gantt chart's not good at it, because every time you bring in more stuff, it complicates the chart. You might take things out, rearrange them, put them in, move resources all around, and it becomes more than a full-time job just to stay on top of your stupid chart. It's not flexible enough. And even agile. So, I'm not going to describe agile in great detail, but I will say, one of the great strengths of agile is just trying to measure what's going on. You'll get this thing called a burn down chart, which shows you your progress as you go along. But, the line's never this neat. It doesn't go up here to down here. You discover things as you go. You discover, that's going to be harder, or there's things we didn't know. And, if you manage it well, it does this. But still, the poor marketing guy is like, I understand, we intend to deliver something around this time frame, but what's in there? What am I trying to sell? It's just not clear enough. At least not for me. And a lot of people are very comfortable with it, make it work for them. I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying maybe there could be another way. And nothing heavyweight. If you have to have a PMP certified guy, if you have to have a certified Scrum Master, to me something's wrong with the system, where just to keep track of a coordinated group of tasks, you have to have expensive for certifications, too complicated, too difficult, need something simpler. So I want to have something where you don't have to have a full-time guy. No one needs any certifications. But I do like the idea. One thing Agile does do is it looks at what is going on. It says, okay, so if this is time here, and we're starting, let's say, January 1st, and out here, let's say it's let's say it's a year-long project, and there's 12/31, so here it is, okay? So over time, you're trying to predict, where will the project finish with the resources and scope we have, or how much scope could we have done, if this is our target date. You're trying to make very accurate predictions so that the company can go around that. And if you try to make all those predictions up front, it's like trying to predict the very, very far future as far as weather or history or politics or whatever. Good luck. You're not going to be accurate. So instead, we look at what's going on today. And by looking at it day to day, we try to manage it towards, something like what we are anticipating. We get all the stakeholders involved. So that idea is from Agile. It's very good stuff, and we're going to adopt that for what we're doing here. It works. But all of this is about risk. So every risk has a potential upside and a potential downside, and somewhere in this area is the probability that it's going to go either way, and maybe how far, how much upside do you get versus how much downside do you get. And so really this is about managing risk. We're talking about very risky projects, and we need to put risk front and center. And so we can think of it like this. Risk can be thought of just like matter and energy. So risk cannot be created, risk cannot be destroyed. It can only be moved around from every level until the event encapsulated by the risk actually occurs, and the amount of upside or downside is actually decided. You can't actually manage it away. You can't make it go away. You can only move it. Let me give you an example. So you can choose not to do a project, and if you choose to do so, then you've got opportunity costs there. You could have done something. It might have made a lot of money for you. It might have made an impact on the market, on society, on civilization. You missed your opportunity. You could choose to do it, but then you have the opportunity cost of other projects you could have done with your resources. You could choose to do something small and release quickly and have time to market advantage, or that risk could be moved out through, you do something much larger and much more impactful, but then you're losing market advantage. And so every choice you make, you have to decide as we go through these steps of building out a project and managing it. Every step you take, where am I moving the risk to? And then once you have it in a place where you're excellent, where you're really good at that part, if we're like really, really good at developing the best code, that's where you want to put your risk. If you're really not all that great at that part, then you want to move your risk elsewhere. But the thing that, so you'll see as we build this out that we are respecting the law of risk conservation, and our project management system should keep us in mind of this is what we're really trying to do, is manage the risk. So you start by creating a backlog. So you can imagine the backlog is this big scroll that tells you the gospel truth about everything we think about a project. And there's my idea, and there's John's idea, and there's Mike's idea, Harry's idea, and all the different things that we might ever want to do. It's a big scrolling list, and they're in priority order. And so the idea is, if they're in priority order, then to define a product release or a project release, we take a chunk of this and we say, this is what we'd like to tackle, is this piece. And we know we can't do everything we ever wanted in the world, but we're going to take this piece out. And so what would that look like? Okay. So you can do this, you can do a backlog in any kind of task management, project management, issue tracking type software like Jira, for example. You can put your backlog in there. But I'm going to show it to you in Excel because it's easy. And so very simple priority. So you can have Excel prioritize things for you. You just change the sorting or whatever. And if you leave enough space between things, it's usually pretty easy to insert things. And so you might have a category. So this, let's pretend we have some sort of software project going on here, and this could be, I don't know, something that helps you schedule your preventative maintenance or something like that. Okay, and this is a very short backlog. Typically, a backlog could have hundreds to thousands of items on it, and you categorize them, and maybe you give them a short nickname so it's easy to refer to them in conversation. You might want to keep track of if we've ever done the work to try to figure out how big it is. Keep track of it in here, because that will help you decide right up front, do you want it high priority or not. If it's insanely expensive, maybe not. But often you won't have this information. You have hundreds of rows without this information yet because you haven't done the work to figure it out. And then as you complete these items, you can mark them complete. You can delete them from the list, whichever way you want to do it. And the important thing here is to capture what's the story. How are we providing value? What people are involved in the process of using the product or service we've produced with a project, and what do they do? So a decent enough description. And this could actually, Excel's good in that we could put a link to an external file in here if we wanted to. maybe link to a document server that has it in there or something like that. Maybe have that as an extra column if we want to. But backlog's the soul of simplicity. We can do this. So that's the easy part. But you need to create a backlog. You need to include your use cases and users. You need to prioritize it. And you really should have some space to keep track of what the size of things are, even if most of them don't have it yet. Because what will happen is when we choose that subset from the backlog, suppose we choose 50 out of 500, we will get sizing information. And because of the sizing information, you're going to take things back out of that subset and say, no way, not this time, maybe next time. And so you can keep track of that information. So that's the first step. Prioritize backlog, keep that going, and then you already have some of your planning done for future versions. Second step, now that you've defined who your candidates are, you need to get some idea of how expensive are they to work with. And so what we do is we use a work breakdown. And so this could be done multiple ways, but I'm going to show you in Excel how this might work. So one of the important things we bring into the picture here, the Project Management Institute, they have a technique called PERT that brings in a weighted average of optimistic, pessimistic, and realistic. Well, in high-risk projects, I think weighting heavily to the realistic is not realistic. So we toss it out, and instead we just keep. And look what happens here. If I say this is going to take optimistically 22 hours and pessimistically 90, we get this measure called risk hours. Risk hours are not real hours, and they don't even really need to be real hours. They're an estimate of real hours. You can consider them an estimate of real hours. You can also consider the pessimistic hours to be a fairly well-grounded estimate. And what do we have here? It's just another weighted average, weighted towards the pessimistic. But once we have enough risk hours, we can use that to track what's going on right now. We can see how quickly are we consuming those risk hours as we go through the project, and that will tell us about where we're going to land. And then we can kind of steer the project towards that. So the idea is you could create several line items in here. And if we had let's say we had a small sub project of, let's do our yard, all the work that needs to be done. So, pull weeds and dig up flower beds and lay down. Let's make it simple. Mow lawn, arrange lawn furniture. So you can just do this, and then this task ID kind of depends on what feature we're describing. So remember, our features in the backlog had a nickname, so we could put the nickname up here somewhere. Feature work breakdown, project, iteration, and feature name. So here's our feature name. Also say the project is housework, and iteration, I'll just call this iteration 0 and explain what that is in a little bit. I can say yard work as one of the features. And so you can do it just a straight line list here, and then these could be yard work 1, yard work 2, and this could be me, and this could be my son, and so on and so on. Very easy. You can also arrange these so that they're a little more organized, especially if you need to break down further. And then you just you can sort of like do an outline within this column that way. So you could do flower beds, and what I might want to do is bold that. And then we come in here and see this thing right here, this increase indent. And so what do we do there? Dig them out. And then the second step is, see, that's already, so we'll just tab over again. That's supposed to be bold. We tab over and we say, besides digging them out, what do we do? Lay in new soil. And so, you know, you can have a list with headings like this, and then in here we'll give them the individual sizings, and that gets everything going. And this will add up. What are the total risk hours for this? Okay. And, you know, stuff like that. So to show you an example, so here's the idea. You know, breaking these down, we can work with this kind of spreadsheet, but I wanted to show you first, having an optimistic and a pessimistic sizing is useful. It'll help you to think about, you know, you see it in your head, and, you know, your instant reaction of what would it take to do it, and then you have to think about everything that could go wrong. And the difference between optimistic and pessimistic can be thought of the amount of risk for the task. You know, obviously, if this is 1 and this is 55, that represents a tremendous amount of risk. And anytime you have something that has some mystery to it, or a learning curve, or it's difficult for some reason, this should be very high, the pessimistic and the difference between them. So you should definitely try to be as pessimistic as possible when you're entering the pessimistic. That's what we're trying to get out of this exercise, doing it this way. You know, a finished work breakdown might look something like this. And you see we have tasks and a person assigned to them, and a unique task ID for each one, optimistic and pessimistic, and it all gets added up. Also, if you look at the worksheet, I have this down here. And let me explain what you're getting out of this. This is automatically calculated. Any of the green background fields are. So what is this? Well, for anything you do, and high tech especially, you need to look for defects, and you need to try to detect problems and errors and bugs. So that's going to take some time, and you have to account for that. So this automatically calculates that for you by adding up these things and then taking a percentage of them. So typically for testing, the metric is 25% of the sum. Stabilization means fixing things. It's anywhere from half to the full sum. You know, no percentage, 100%, depending on what you're building, how complex and how difficult it is. So that's something to judge as you go into each project. What should that level be set to? You know, so half is a good starting place, but I'll break out of that. Half is a good starting place, but you're probably going to have to tweak that based on what kind of project you're building. And of course, if you need to, suppose we had a whole bunch more than 34 tasks in here, I could take these and just cut and paste them here. I'm unsure what that's unhappy about. Let me try that again. I did something wrong. Oh, I know why. It's because these are referring to 11 through 34. But we could, yeah. So I was on the right track. You can take these. Those aren't absolute references. They shouldn't even be. And you just have to remember to fix everything back up. That was a copy and paste. And I can clear these out and see what that did there. Some D26 through 49. So we just need to reset that little box. See, it's in the wrong place. To cover all of these instead of the ones that were there previously. Right, and then same for each one of these. So you can patch it up if you need to. If you do have a feature that's bigger, than the 34 feature, you might want to consider breaking down the feature into sub features. But you can always move this down, fix up. It has to refer to the sum of its entire column before it, and you're good. But this will automatically build into the total risk hours. some time to find bugs and problems, and time to fix them as well. So, gonna bring that back to where we were. So you've seen this. I think I'm gonna close that out. Once you have some of this work done with the sizing, then it's important to try to divide the project into two classes. Each feature should be classified as a must-have or a should-have. So must-haves are you're promising to deliver this by the end of the project. A should-have is you'd like to have it, it'd be really great, it's a competitive differentiator, all that good stuff, but you're not promising it to any customers. You're not promising it to anybody, in fact. So by making this sort of classification, what you want to do is balance them out. So if you have the entire scope of the backlog, and this is all the scope, so total risk hours, you want to divide this in half. Must have on this side, should have over here, and have your scope balanced. Because the truth of the matter is, if you have everything as must-haves, you're just not going to get them all. So you've done a poor job of your planning if everything is must-have. So really, you have to, even if you have to move some of the things you really must have, if you have to move it into a must-have of your second version, do that and have some should-haves to pad it with. Because the truth of the matter is, with a big, sophisticated, complex project, this is the only way to ensure that you can accurately predict for certain you're going to have this, and you may have all these extras, or a good portion of them as well. So that's an important part of the process to build that. And then now you're thinking, well, okay, in a Gantt chart, so this is all well and good, and the Gantt chart doesn't have must-haves and should-haves encoded in it. But what about the idea of dependencies? Where you absolutely have to, design something or how it works and interfaces with other part of the systems before you actually start building it, fabricating it, coding it, whatever you're going to do. And there's a hard dependency here, which shoves this out here, right? So that's how you would do it in a Gantt chart. It's too fine granularity. I mean, in reality, you can divide the project up into phases, and then we'll do sort of a mini sub-project for each phase is what you do. And you build that out with the same spreadsheets and whatever. So each one of these you can consider to be its own set of candidates from the backlog. And then the must-haves would go in the first few phases, and then the should-haves would go in the other two phases. That's how that would go here if you divide it into 4 phases. But the idea is you divided the phases such that your dependencies are all set up for you. By the time you've done all this, you're ready to do all this, is the overall idea. So dividing into phases like that resolves your dependencies. And if you have extremely complex task level granular interdependencies, there's something wrong with your project definition. There's something wrong with the way you build your product. You need to go back and take a look at it. It's too complicated. You've introduced too much risk there. And that's hard for human minds to track, and it doesn't even make that much sense looking at it through a Gantt chart. So if you can't look at it in a glance and understand it, it's wrong. And you've taken on too much risk. So the other thing you can do with, obviously you're trying to attack the riskiest such stuff first. So once you have these must-haves here, is you want to try to take the things that are hardest and put them right up front, and the must-haves, right? And then the hardest should-haves would be over here. So you're tackling the riskiest, hardest stuff first, because often you'll find additional work you hadn't thought of there, or you'll find some potholes you hadn't thought of there. In fact, it's extremely useful before you even do these other phases. Make time for a discovery phase. And all the discovery phases, you identify things where you don't know enough, and you do enough work on those things in this discovery phase, on all the features that are too mysterious, too much learning curve, you don't really know enough to assess them correctly, or the optimistic pessimistic variation is just way too high. Well, do a discovery phase first, and don't even plan this other stuff until you've passed the discovery phase. So the discovery phase, you just jump in with both feet and try, to build stuff, and you learn by doing, and that gives you enough information that now the subsequent phases can have a much better chance of success because you consume some of the risk already. And so, the risk can't be created or destroyed. It can be moved around, so we're spreading it out in such a way it's easier to export. Living organism, it seems to kind of contradict the law of thermodynamics. It can't. It stays organized. It gets more organized. What's going on here, really? And the same thing. Well, think of it how an organism processes energy. You're bringing it in, and then you're exporting it out through your activities. Well, the same with the project. What we're trying to do is we're trying to export the risk. The moment you get a customer to pay for this stuff, it's paid off. You've got the upside. So when you convert risk into value, you've exported. You have some sort of value here that you can now take into the marketplace. You've exported that risk to your competitors. And so that's the name of the game. Risk consumption. How quickly can we do it? How skilled can we be at it? And how much can we export to our competitors? And so once you're trying to arrange it so that it's easy to export. So what we're trying to do here is attack the riskiest stuff first and take the mystery out. And the sooner we can do that, the easier it is to get everything together to make it productizable. We've divided this into phases. And I said you put these into their own project worksheets or whatever. And here's the reason you do that. You can go ahead and plan, your phases as far out as you want to. But really what you're going to end up doing is at the end of each phase, you complete a phase, and then you reevaluate the planning for the next phase. You may resize some things based on what you've learned, but you have to have a stop. You have to have a pause where you revisit all of your current plans. You maybe rearrange the scope, rearrange the phases, update the sizings, and then proceed based on what you learned in the previous ones. So that's how you define the project. That's how you scope all the different features. That's how you account for the risk. So once you have all this, do you actually put it to use? Well, so this is a sample project. So you'd hand out those feature work breakdowns, and then you can copy them into this master worksheet like this. Okay, and you can see each feature has its own sub worksheet here. They're all assigned. Well, an important thing to notice here, I neglected to mention the sizing. No optimistic sizing can be more than a single workday. None at all. So you don't. If there's something that seems like it should take longer, break it down into smaller tasks. This will give us much more accuracy. If you aim small, you're going to miss small, and you are going to miss. But you don't want to miss too much. We want to have some level of prediction, some level of accuracy in this. Take the risk out. So by going small, see and this is a violation right here. This should never be allowed to be 16 or 12. Really, they should be broken down maybe into 2 tasks, or maybe several more. Pessimistic can be considerably larger. But at least on the optimistic side, you want to break down each task to a day or less. And what we may have been thinking here is actually, I think this is a mock project, and a lot of the names have been changed, but I copied from some real data that we used, and we were actually working 16-hour days for a while. But okay, let's say you have all these. You have them put together. Okay, well, that all rolls up to a summary. So what are we looking at here? We're just looking at each worksheet. You go grab F6. And what is F6? Well, F6 is the total risk hours. for that item. Total risk hours, right there. Total risk hours. Total risk hours, right there. So let's say you wanted to add a new one. Okay, you could do this, and then you could copy workbook in here, and then in the summary you would go and you'd modify this. You'd add plus, and then you just go find that cell and add it in there, and it would get added into this. No problem. You gotta also, there's total pessimistic hours left. And then the point of this is every day what we want to do is, all you have to do is I could send I've seen this done via email. I've also, the way I prefer to do it is we have a Skype chat window open, and all the team members are always on it, and so there's this ongoing conversation about the project at all times. But every morning you type in, okay, here are the things I finished. So there's no progress meter, there's no percentage, things are done or they're not done. So to say this is done, all I have to do is put a 1 in this column, and you see total risk hours goes down, total risk hours goes down, 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 down. So I can identify the CC5, give it the name, the work item name, and say that's done. And sometimes, you find out I was wrong, it's not quite done, and you go back and you put it in. The other thing you'll find happen a lot in projects, especially where there's high risk, is you'll find new work items. So you know what? You can either create a new sheet and add them in there, or depending on what feature they're related to, you could put them in the existing ones and you add them in. And so you'll see risk hours go up instead of down. And that's perfectly natural and should be expected to some extent. If you don't have enough mystery in your project, maybe you're not, then you're basically, what you've done is you have an innovation risk. You're building something a bit too mundane, and there's the risk that a competitor will pass you in the market because of it. So you want to push the envelope somewhat, right? So you will see new things drop in here and the risks go up. This is the reason why we have the should have area to absorb some of those impacts as they come in. So all that rolls into the summary. Well, that's not quite enough. Not quite enough to get. So daily, everybody sends in, everybody who's working on it will send in, here's what I completed. And then you have one person just kind of come in here and on the master copy, put in ones where the ones belong to indicate tasks are complete. And that will draw down on the summary. And then we have this burn down thing. So this one isn't really filled in, but I'll show you what you do. So every day people say I completed some tasks. So let's complete some. We'll complete some of these, and a couple of these, and a couple of these, and just a few of these, etc. Okay, so that number's gone down, 368 to 341. Suppose we have a really good day, okay, 4/13/2012. I can come in here, I can copy this. You want to be careful at this point. You can't just paste special values, right? Okay, so that goes in there. See what happened here? This one down right here. This shows the slope of our line. I always keep the target end date with a 0 at the tail of the list, which gives us a slope that shows from here how fast would we have to be to get to our target end date. And if you see this is steeper going down, that's good. If it was flatter or flat, then you can see we're off target. So this is a daily process. Every day we update this burn down chart is the idea. Okay, I'm going to close this and not save it, because what I can show you is more of a completed sample. So this is one where I kind of did everything. Okay, and here's more of a completed, and there's some things to explain here. I've just repeated this process for all these days up to 5:15, and then I stopped. And you can see there's quite a bit of scope left over. I want to show you something. All these are done. The risk remaining is testing and stabilization. So it's kind of harder to track the progress in here with a task complete or versus not complete type style. And I also don't trust percentages. So at this point, what you've done is you've moved to all the features are done. We've got it basically stable. It looks like it's working, but we need to find all the problems. So at this point in the project, you shift from here you can judge, do we seem to have enough time left to finish the risk hours left? To finish how much time it's going to take to find and fix all those problems. So that gives you a fair indicator of that. And from here, it looks like we really, really do. But then you're going to move into a defect tracking system, whether that's Jira or TeamTrack or there are various others, right? And so you use that, and then you watch your open versus close rate on problems, on trouble tickets or bugs. And you track those towards your end date. Well, what this got you to is sort of a feature complete state, and your phase is done, up to feature complete, and then you want to stabilize it. And yes, you should stabilize each phase before you move on to the next one. And that, again, draws out the risk, lets you build on a firmer foundation going forward from here. And so this was just a repeat of this project going forward. And you can see all we did was fill in ones, fill in ones, fill in ones, and that's what it looks like when something like this has served its full purpose and is done. And then you have the breakdown, you have your burn down, and you're ready to stabilize the thing. But this is still not enough. We can still do just a little more to make this all work. Obviously, as you go, you need to adjust what's going on. If your line's headed straight up like this, and let's say you're way over here in this part of the project, and it's looking bad, you obviously need to change what you're doing. So what you could do is you could say, I'm taking this feature out. Just, come here, delete the whole thing. Bingo, whatever was left, you can do it in the next version or whatever. That automatically brings your scope down because you cut it out. You could decide to do it a simpler way and simplify your work breakdown. You could decide to add resources and increase your burn rate, so this line becomes steeper going down. Or you could decide you're doing really, really well and you've got a really steep line going down, and now you want to gold plate. Or you talk to you have the customer involved in the process during this whole thing. They can see the project, it's transparent to them, and they understand what's being built and how it's being built. That's beautiful, because then they can talk to you about it. They can customize it as they go. They can help you in the process of building it, and then they are more likely to want to buy it. And what's beautiful about it is they can see the impact of each decision, and they can actually say, we've been looking at this thing you're building, this particular feature, managed apps. We thought we wanted it. Now that we see how it's shaping up, we'd really rather have the mapping function or whatever. So you pull this out and you stick the other one in midstream. Try doing that with a Gantt chart, I dare you. And everything gets reflected as you go along through the burn down, and how much project is left, how many risk hours are left. So risk hours are kind of funny money. They're monopoly money. But what's important is how quickly are you actually burning them down, what's happening now, and then your predictive power is the power of predicting what's the slope of this line, where's it going, where's it going to land us. And what you do is every couple of weeks in this process, you get together and you do a short demo meeting of what have we built, can we see anything, let's show it off, let's show it to our potential customers who are really close to us and involved in this process. And then you can talk about, okay, that's really hard, so why don't we not do that? You can talk about what do we substitute for this in the place of this thing, because this is kind of lame now that we actually see it. You can talk about this is cool, and now that we see, we really would rather do the souped up deluxe version, because this is going to be the most awesome thing ever. So you can make the decisions every 2 weeks, and you get that demo which shows you something substantial, and you can review how do I rearrange this phase, how do I rearrange this iteration, and so that I can optimize the project, and we can see exactly where it's going to land. And sometimes, as you're working through with this with a customer, they'll say, honestly, I know you said we'll get it in this date over here, but we just have to have this thing, so put it in there, and it's okay if it goes out to August. And then, because they were involved in the decision, it doesn't feel like a lie to them. It doesn't feel like you're a bozo at the end of the day. They feel like that's because of their input, right? So that makes it palatable to them. So this is pretty much the full life cycle of the thing and how you do it. And you can see using the spreadsheet is really, really simple, and going through each of the steps is really, really simple. And yet I can say this has worked on enormously complex, difficult software projects. And that doesn't mean it's a panacea. You have to manage it along the way. You have to pay attention to what's going on, and you have to make good decisions. But at least gives you the framework to understand where you are and what decisions you need to make to get to where you're targeting. So that's the whole thing here. And hopefully, if you're watching this video, you have these sample spreadsheets as well, and you can put them to use right away to do your own projects and have them be well managed. And whatever it is you're working on, I wish you lots of luck.